Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about Patek Philippe watches, where I think they are going to go in terms of desirability and pricing, and also a little bit about where they came from, because as a watch dealer, studying the market every day, especially with Del Rey Watch, where we buy, sell, and trade watches, I've noticed a trend of where the desirability has kind of gone, not only from the sports watches from the brand, but also some of the other watches. And I think it's very telling of the times that we're in, but also very telling of where Patek Philippe is going to go in terms of desirability. Is there a bubble? Will it pop? I'm going to cover this in just 1 second. But if you have not checked out me on Instagram already, I'm on Instagram, The Real John P, where you can see more about these types of watches as well as what we do at delreywatch.com. On the wrist today, vintage Le Coultre chronograph, Valjoux 72 driven, basically the same movement that was in the Newman Daytonas from Rolex. Very cool watch. I love it. Casual, does not get nearly enough wrist time. So Patek Philippe watches, let's set the tone here for the brand. If you've missed it, perhaps you don't follow watch collecting all that much, but you're interested. I get it. Patek Philippe Tiffany dial 5711, signed by the jewelry retailer Tiffany, sold at auction for 6.5 million US dollars. A watch that was produced in modern times, just produced several months later, not even sold for record pricing, 6.5 million US dollars. A watch that retailed, if you could get one granted, which was impossible, essentially at under 100,000 US dollars. So that sets the tone of where the watches are going. Now that's almost an anomaly in terms of modern watches. Vintage, not so much. Ultra rare Patek Philippe vintage watches have been selling for similar prices, $1 million plus, for quite some time. But what this goes to show is the collector confidence in the brand. That one person that bought the watch is setting the tone and the confidence for all other collectors to follow for the brand, right? Let's talk sport watches. The Patek Philippe 5711 Nautilus 1A blue dial standard watch, a watch that you used to be able to purchase, selling now out there on the market over 200,000 US dollars, 4 times, 5 times plus the retail price when it was not discontinued for the watch. Now, 5167 stainless steel, the Aquanaut, right? This is on the rubber strap. These are selling at north of 100,000 US dollars. The Aquanaut line being a line that was overlooked for the last decade for the most part, with the exception of the last 5 years. So I guess, 10 years ago, this was a watch line that was ignored. People wanted that Nautilus. Going into today, people are spending 5 times the retail price to get one pre-owned. These are sport watches. That's understandable, I think, considering look at Rolex, look at some of the other brands where the sport watches are selling at premiums. People want that athleisure style watch that they can wear anywhere, do anything kind of lifestyle, right? That's kind of where the Western world is going. And so I think we can make the case for that, considering Patek Philippe only produces 62,000 watches per year. A fraction of those are going to be the watches from these two collections. So, okay, I think we can kind of get there on this. But let's look at dress watches, right? Dress watches have not had a great time in the last decade. People don't dress up like they used to decades ago, for the most part, on average. These are trends. Countless studies have been done. Look at the fashion magazines. Look at how people are dressing in movies and pop culture. People don't dress up like they used to in the United States, especially. But this is following out and following suit to the rest of the world for the most part. But looking at the Calatrava line, the dress line, a line you could use to just kind of walk into Tourneau and purchase one, the 6119G Calatrava retails at 30,000 US dollars, now selling online at 37,000 US dollars. So over retail, dress line Calatrava, for a watch that's pretty simple, is a little bit more modern and more attractive than your standard Calatrava. I'll give whoever's going to mention that in the comments below credit for that. But nonetheless, a dress watch from Patek Philippe selling at significantly above the retail price. So we know that, right? Patek Philippe is not only gaining in desirability, the confidence level is increasing. The pricing selling out there in the market is much higher than the retail prices of the watch. And this is modern. But take us into vintage, non-rare vintage. Let's forget the vintage watches that are selling, owned by, some king or some royalty person, right? Let's ignore that for a second, because those are going to be super special, rare, more assets, more art than, your standard fare consumer watch that people are going to be wearing. Let's look at a Patek Philippe 3923 that we just took in at Del Rey Watch, 31 millimeters in case size. A case size of a dress watch that was small even when this watch came out in the 90s. This was small then. Datejests were 36 millimeters in the 90s. This watch was roughly 31 to 32, depending on how you measure it, millimeters in size. So small then, extremely small for today's standards, where brands are producing 40 millimeter case size dress watches. This is a watch that you couldn't even sell 5 years ago. Very difficult sell. Most people would consider it too small. I personally really love this size. I think it's traditional and classic, but that's where the trending was. This is a watch today, north of $10,000. We'll see what it ends up selling for at Del Rey Watch, but someone that I do business with recently sold one. They sold it pretty quickly at about this price point. Of course, to another dealer, it sold very quickly, but this also exemplifies that even the watches that were in recent times considered incredibly undesirable, even though it had that Patek Philippe branding on it just because of what it was, these watches are selling quickly and at all-time high prices as well. Now, why is this? Well, the reality is Patek Philippe has just really taken over not only the auction scene, pop culture. In a lot of songs, celebrities are wearing them. I know a lot of people that watch this don't necessarily care about who's wearing the watches, but the reality is, a lot of casual buyers do. It kind of introduces them to the brand and makes it more of a pop icon. So whether or not you're a watch collector, it just increases the desirability of the branding overall. And you see that kind of trickle down where people are wanting to buy anything that they can obtain from Patek Philippe as a brand, even if historically it would have been a model that would be undesirable, likely because it has the Patek Philippe name on it, and it is from that branding that more people are wanting, desiring, and possibly relating to in terms of what they offer as a feeling from the brand when you kind of buy into the branding as a customer. And Patek Philippe only produces roughly 62, or in that range, 60,000 pieces per year, right? 60,000 pieces per year. And this great influx of not only watch collectors, but also people wanting to purchase these things as alternative assets and status symbols is making anything from Patek Philippe incredibly desirable. And we see that in vintage, we see that in modern, and we see that in watches that historically people would not be eager to put in their collection and selling at premiums. Now, where do I think this is going to go? Is this a bubble? I think if Patek Philippe keeps the production volume at around this range, maybe a little bit higher, who knows? But let's say they keep it in this range, I think the prices have to go up. I mean, even with Rolex producing over 1 million watches per year, the pricing has gone up as well. Now, in most cases, not to the same degree as the Patek Philippe watches, or the hottest Patek Philippe watches, if you take that as a factor or a multiple of the original retail price and where they end up out there on the market. Not quite there on average. Some of the pieces, let's not talk about the Rainbow Daytonas, things like that, but on average, not quite there. But they produce 1 million watches per year. So as more people find out and acknowledge and resonate and enjoy and want to be part of that Patek Philippe collector community, the prices will just have to go up. And because so many more people are getting into watch collecting every day, I see it at Del Rey Watch, not only by just the volume of traffic in terms of our web traffic, but on our views on our channels from not only mine, but also Federico Talks Watches, views on other people's YouTube channels, the numbers, the amount of investors that are looking for exposure to the watch industry, and also just the sheer number of watch brands that have come out in terms of even micro brands in recent times, and they all seemingly have good sales volume. Not all, but enough to where it shows that collectors are increasing the number of them. There's more of an appetite to own more watches, higher end watches. And when we put that and kind of transpose it on the Patek Philippe scenario here, they're only producing a certain number of watches per year, yet the potential buyers or the people that want them are just increasing at such a rapid rate, right? This is a rate that I would love to see measured in some way, right? Hopefully, one of the consulting firms, Bain, McKinsey, one of the others, maybe they'll do some type of research on this. There's something that a couple of studies that were done a handful of years ago, but something modern I think would be unbelievable to see, because I'm seeing it at Delray Watch. I'm seeing it by working with you as collectors, talking with people on YouTube, speaking with other dealers, and just seeing the level of action that's happening in this industry. So Patek Philippe watches in the future, sports watches, for sure. I think it would truly be a miracle for the watches to go down in price, especially considerably. Maybe some of the vintage dress watches, I don't see them going down in terms of pricing, maybe desirability, maybe they'll sit a little bit longer. But the reality is the confidence level is so high for this brand right now, I can't even see dealers wanting to get rid of the watches at losses or smaller margins, just because out of all the watches they could get rid of in their inventory, they have the most confidence at these being closest to cash convertible as possible. So there would really be no reason, unless they fell down on their luck, but in which case all the other watches would likely be liquidated beforehand. So it would truly be needed for a catastrophe to happen, in my opinion, for these watches to take a considerable hit in terms of pricing. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen. I've done videos in the past where I've made predictions, and things like the pandemic have happened where things have changed and gone in certain directions that you just can't foresee into the future, right? You can't necessarily predict that. So anything could happen, but pending most things stay constant, these watches are becoming more desirable daily. More people are asking for them daily. And so it should follow that the pricing will continue to climb, just so long as people actually continue to collect watches, which you'll leave in the comments below. I don't think anyone has the intent of giving up on anytime soon. What do you think? Patek Philippe watches, have any of you been on the fence recently about them? Have you added them to your collection? Would love to hear it and see it in the comments below. Please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I do appreciate it. You can find me on Instagram, TheRealJohnP, and also you can check out DelrayWatch.com. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.